Hey everybody, I'm very excited tonight because I get to talk about PowerShell again. And those of you who know me fairly well know how excited I get, probably even overly so, right, about getting to talk about PowerShell. But tonight's going to be really cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to manage our database files with PowerShell. So let me outline the situation here for you. I've got this database right here, and I'll go to Properties, go to Files. Now you look here, I've got a handful of files here, okay, and they're all set to auto grow, and all the data files are set by 10%, and I've got one data file set to go by 1 meg, and that's just ridiculous, right? So 10% and 1 meg are both really bad options. We'll talk about that some other time, right? Right now we're going to talk about how to get off of it. So the situation arose, this is actually something that came up at work. We've got a database with like 85 or 90 data files in it, and we want to get rid of most of them and start narrowing down the number of files, because we finally got a LUN big enough that'll hold them all. So rather than go through here and click on each one of these, right, because I can come here, I can click on that little ellipsis and say don't enable file grow, because I want to turn off file grow so that the files don't get any bigger, because I'm going to start emptying them and dropping them off the database. So I certainly don't want them getting any bigger while I do that, right? So I have to stop the auto grow. But you can, that's just our situation. I mean, anything you want to do. Say if you've got a bunch of data files that have different file growths, right? So this one's at 10% and this one's at 1 meg. So you know, if I wanted to match those up and say make them all 10% or all 1 meg or all 100 megs or 1,000 megs or something, right? You know, because you probably don't want them to grow at different rates. You know, it's probably not a good idea. So, you know, for any reason why you want to touch a large number of the files in your database, this is a good way to do it. So my options are what? My options are coming in here and clicking on this ellipsis, you know, in my case 85 or 90 times, which is not an option, right? The second option is to write a T-SQL that will do a dynamic, a T-SQL cursor that will build a dynamic SQL inside of there, and then, you know, it'll build the alter database statement for you, and that's okay. I mean, that's the traditional way that we have to do it, but that's not really optimal either. This is where PowerShell is going to come in, and it's going to come in a really, really cool way, okay? So I'm going to show you, I'm going to just go ahead and close this down. I'm going to show you how to do this. You right-click on Higher Ed, and you say Start PowerShell. Now I'm going to get an error here when this comes up because of I'm adding the snap-ins in my profile, but that won't affect anything that we're doing here. So okay, so I've got the Higher Ed DB here, and I'll just show you how we do the discovery, do a directory on it. Okay, I've got all the facets here that I can do. I'm going to go to File Groups, so I'm going to say CD, File Groups, directory on that. So I can go to Data or Primary. Let's see, let's try Primary. Good, now let's do a directory on that. CD Files, do a directory on that. Okay, you can see I've got these guys right here, Higher Ed, and then I've got Data 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? So, how do I know what they're set at now? Now, I could do all this programmatically, right? But I'm going to show you how to discover some of these things. So I'm going to say Directory, I'm going to do a Get Member on here so I can see what I'm looking at. And I've got these properties here. So I want to do Name and growth and growth type. So I'm going to say format table, name, growth type, and I'm going to do an auto size. That should get it. Okay, good. So you can see here that growth type is clearly a text, and this is clearly a number. So every one of these are set to grow at 10%, right? But what we're going to do is we're just going to turn it off, okay? Now there are a couple ways we can do this within PowerShell, and you know, neither one of them is really better than the other one. It doesn't really matter. But I do want to point something out to you early on, that this has an alter method, okay? And remember, I've said this in other videos, anytime that an object has an alter method, it's usually best to use it, because that usually means that if you don't use it, it's only going to change it in your PowerShell session, in your pipeline. It's not going to actually persist that to the database itself. So this is one of those cases, I know, because I've worked this example out, that if you don't use the alter, then it will not be persisted to the database. And that's usually what I found to be true. So it's a good idea to pull a get member on all of these and see if they have an alter method. And if they don't, then, I mean, if they do, then you better use it, right? So, okay. So we're going to start with a directory, or we could do a GCI, right? Either one will work. And I'm going to pipe that to a for each, include my curlies, current iteration. Now, at this point, I've got to make a decision. And I'm on PowerShell 2.0, and that's actually going to matter here in a minute. I'll tell you why when we get there. But right now, we've got the growth type property, right? So I'm going to say growth type equals, and remember, this is just a text, right? So I'm going to say none. So right now, I'm going to say growth type equals none. And remember, I want to persist this, so I'm going to put a semicolon there. And just call the alter method on top of that. So all I've done is I've gone to the files, the primary and the files, right? Directory, and then I'm pulling a directory, and for each one of those, this is the for each right here, I'm saying take the growth type property and set it equal to none, because it's, you know, I could set it equal to you know, whatever, any other text value that it accepts. Semicolon to terminate that statement, and then I'm going to take the current iteration, I'm going to alter it. So this should run without incident. There we go. Now if I do an up arrow a couple times, right there, now I've got none, right? Now if I go back and verify this in my GUI files, and you see here, none of them have any autogrowth set, with the exception of number 7, okay? Data file number 7. That's because it's in a different file group, right? So what I'm going to have to do to get to the right file group is I'll have to go one. Now if I do a directory here, cd to data, do another directory, go to files. There we go. There's number 7. Now I just got to find that line that changed everything. There it is. So growth type equals none. And I did an alter. There we go. So I should be able to come here. And there it is, set to none again, right? So excellent. That looks good. Now, remember I said there was another way to do this. And there is. You can actually call the setter method, which for those of you who are .NET savvy, know exactly what I mean. But the setter in this point, in this context, is a method that comes with this that will do all of that for you. It will set this property for you via an exposed method. Okay, but one thing that you'll see, let's see if I go directory, get member. But you see here in this list of methods, there isn't anything that allows you to do that, right? You can get the type, or you can refresh, or you can rename, or set offline, or shrink, or whatever. But there isn't anything that talks about getting the growth type, or setting the growth type, or any of that, right? That's because here in PowerShell 2.0, they have hidden those from us, okay? So all we got to do is basically turn them back on. Now, the only reason we have to turn these on is so that we can see which ones we have to choose from. PowerShell actually loads them into memory, so I could actually call the setter right now but I just can't see it in the list. So I can use it, I just can't see it. But what if we want to see it? We don't, know how it's spelled, or we don't know exactly what it's called, or we don't even know that it exists, and we want to see that it exists, right? So, you have to do a directory /force, and then say get member, or is it get member force? It's get member force. Sorry, directory get member force. Now look what I get. See, now I get all of these extra methods, and there's one here called, where is it? Get growth type, and there's one here called set growth type. So that's the one I'm going to use. I'm going to use the set growth type method right here. Okay, so it's basically the same thing. I'm going to say directory. I'm going to get my for each. Don't forget my curlies. Oops, come back here. Nope, that was right. Okay. Now, instead of calling the property value down here, where'd it go? Growth type equals none. I'm going to use, there it is, set growth type. And I'm going to pass it the value of none. So I'm going to say set growth type none, right? Semicolon, alter. So it's the same thing as calling the alter method. I'm just calling a different method, right? So this, again, will work, should work. Oops. Dun, dun, dun. Let me see, what did I forget? Okay, so let me do this. Sorry about that. Come here. The problem was, there we go. Didn't set that properly. There. And it's the same thing. I gotta do W. Well, sorry, I'll get this back to where we wanted it. Right there. But since it was already there, I didn't really end up changing anything, right? But you see that it did what it was supposed to. I was able to call it. Where is it again? There we go. I was able to call the directory with growth type. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Where are you? Come on. There we go. I was able to call the growth type setter, the set underscore growth type, and then pass it the alter, and everything is good. So there you go. That's how you manage your database files. Now you can set any of these properties in here that you need to, right? Probably with the exception of the ID. I don't know if you can change the ID or not. But anything that you can do in T-SQL or in the GUI or in an alter database statement, you should be able to change right here. So this is a really good way to set, mass properties on things. So there you go. That's an excellent way to do this, and I'm thrilled to be able to bring it to you. And don't forget that that PowerShell 2 trick, because that's going to trip you up sometimes. Take care.